and what's going on with everything in the insurance world. One of the things I get asked the most is how is it that insurance companies actually come up with a price, or how come my premiums are so high? In the past, they used to use zip codes, your proximity to a fire hydrant, how close are you to a fire station. Those are still factors for rating insurance. However, now, in addition to that, the ISO, who is the Insurance Services Office, hires a company called Verisk Analytics, and they determine within that fire protection class, each parcel within that has a fire score, and that has to do with the slope of your property, the kind of fuels that are 200 feet out from your house, 400 feet, quarter of a mile, and they use a score. My company happens to use Fireline, and we can only write new business with a score of no more than 3. In the past, we could write a house up to a score of 12. This has been in the last year. So that has changed drastically over the last year due to the fact that we are currently in such a drought situation. It's drier and drier every year. So for the most part, there's several kinds of insurance policies, but our standard package policies in California cover your dwelling, your interior contents, your separate structures. They cover you for liability, so on and so forth. Those are getting fewer and further apart and less able to write. The last 2 years of my being in this industry, and I've been doing this for the last 15 years, I have seen it go from this to this, and when I can no longer find a standard company to write a homeowner policy, we go to the California Fair Plan, which is a California pool of insurers. They will only write a home if it's in a high fire risk area. They have a very, very strict, extremely strict underwriting rules, and when they say your home has to be cleared of all brush and I mean everything up to 200 feet, they don't want you to live in the desert, but there's nothing on the ground as far as brush or chaparral, things like that. They want to be 200 feet or more away from your home. And even if there's your property line, they want you to go over your neighbor's property line. They make it very difficult to get that insurance in place. It does not cover you for liability, theft, water damage. It only covers you for fire, and that's wildland fire also on top of it. It's real hard to get, and once you have it, they do re-inspect the properties from time to time, and it's not unusual to get canceled. In Mariposa County, my company, Farmers, only writes an ISO score of, actually it's the Fireline score of 3 or less. Kathy's Valley, we can write some policies. Mostly we've been writing fair policies this year. Why are my premiums increasing? Well, because fire risk is increasing, and they're not, and at this point in time, I don't see that they will ever go down. I have seen it in the past where we had insurance rates and then they come up with a new policy and the rates go down, but that kind of bit the insurance carriers in the rear end, because now those policies that went down are doubling, tripling. In some cases I've seen them quadruple in rate over the last 2 years. When we write a policy, it's real important because people are trying to keep their costs down. A lot of times they want us to insure a home for much less than it would cost to replace it. Under California law, as insurers with licenses, we have to make sure that we write a policy for a replacement cost on a home. We actually have a program called the 360 estimator that every insurer in California uses. I have a fly, I'm not. And the thing of that is that we don't want to, even though the rate may be more, we don't want to underwrite something that's going to cost you in the long run. I've seen that happen, unfortunately. A lot of the questions I get are, Renewals and cancellations. The company that I work for, Farmers, is not just randomly canceling policies. Sometimes an insurer will pull out of an area and no longer write. I've seen that happen a lot over the last couple of years. Sometimes they go and they do random inspections, and if they see that there are certain underwriting things that are less than desirable, tree limbs hanging over houses, debris in the yard, and 2 or 3 dead cars parked in the back 40, lots of brush, those things can cause a homeowner policy to get canceled or non-renewed. If that happens to you, talk to your agent, find out what you can do to stop the non-renewal, and usually you can get that by just complying with what the issues were. You don't pay your premium, you may never get that policy again. So I tell people who call my office, you know, oh, my rate's high. If you're with a good company, hold on to it with both hands. One of the ways to change that is to increase your deductibles. We are not currently canceling our insureds, Farmers, for a loss history, but I do know there are insurers in California that are, if you have one loss on your record, even though you might have been with the company forever, they're being canceled and non-renewed. So keep that in mind. Talk to your agent if you do have a concern. It's legitimate. You know, my toilet overflowed and, you know, I have some problems at my house. Talk to your agent first and find out what your deductible is, because if the loss is less than your deductible, don't turn it in. Keep yourself safe on that in this current underwriting situation. Vince is going to be talking next, but I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions because I get them every day. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, my question is, you were talking about the insurer making an inspection saying there were low-hanging tree limbs, junk cars, debris on the property. What if it's your neighbor's property?
If you can prove that, and that's why I say talk to your agent if that ever happens, because I personally go out and I take pictures and make sure things are compliant if it is the neighbor's property. And that seems to be a big issue here too, because the brush coming up from a neighbor's property too, you can't always go and clear it, but it may not be 200 feet back for a fair plan, or even 100 feet back for your own safety. So those are things you need to discuss with your insurer. You know, I saw policies go up 182% last year.
Wow.
Really?
And one of the things that I did personally in our agency is we met with as many insureds as we could and went over their replacement cost on their homes. We made sure that everything was exactly as it should be. We raised deductibles because a lot of these people had $500 or $1,000 deductibles. Some of them now have $5,000 deductibles. Because now it's a new world and you have to look at it for the big stuff. It's not, I'm going to turn in a claim for a tree fell on my fence. I'm going to turn in a claim because a wildfire took out my barn or part of my house, you know. So those are the things you have to weigh. Sometimes your insurers will also give you packaging deals if you bundle. So those are just some things to think about. And it is kind of sad. Sometimes it is, you know, welcome to Mariposa.
Yeah.
We are the second highest insured area in California right now. Alpine County, up by Lake Tahoe.
Now, our insurance company not only had a visual with Google Earth and a fire rating on the internet, they also came out and inspected and took pictures and gave us a detailed 12-page report and telling us where our issues were or if we had any issues and how to make improvements.
I know that the California Fair Plan actually does those kinds of reports. When I get reports back, they're not usually that detailed, but if there are issues, it'll tell what they are. So that's pretty good though, because not all insurers will do that. But they do aerial views and they do ground level inspections always when they issue a policy. Yes, sir?
We're doing a lot of major fire reduction at our place up here, a lot. Will the premiums go down when we get through?
That's a big question. Another question, a lot of people also say, oh, they just put a new fire station down at Bridgeport. That may change the fire protection class. If there's a new fire station, that takes a long time. It's a slow moving process with ISO. They're the ones who determine that, and they're the ones who change the protection classes. I have on occasion seen those fire line scores that are assigned to your property. I've seen them change up or down. The honest to goodness truth is I don't know who does that at any given time. If it's a random, because sometimes things come through on computers that are completely inaccurate, and so we have to go to bat for our customers. But that's, I think, something that may happen in the future. Just keep an eye on your policy and talk to your agent about that. If they can tell you if that rating has changed on your property.
The answer, when I went after my 52%, I was told, well, so you did it this year, but you're not going to do it this next year. And they said, all we care about is the zip code that you're in.
Some carriers only care about the zip code, but within that zip code are the fire protection classes and then the individual properties too. So I think that's kind of I don't know. I don't know if that's a completely accurate answer for you.
He didn't care, you know, he talked about the park environment, or, you know, around. Even though I created that, he didn't care.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the very area in which we live. In 2013, farmers hit 1,562 zip codes up and down the state, and it was mostly mountainous areas, and we're the ones that got the brunt of all of the rate increases because we are in fire zones, which the whole state of California is now, but we're particularly vulnerable to that. So, yes, sir.
Can you talk about insurance considerations for people coming to work on their property?
That is a question that I've had a lot of discussion with. I even call our underwriting department. Within each policy that has a liability, when you have your liability, it states basically that they will defend you in the event of a lawsuit against you. They will determine negligence. That's what liability suits get paid out on. And as was discussed out there, Frank even mentioned it, that if you have someone working on your property and they do something, they're under the umbrella of whatever your homeowner policy is. So it's not to be frightened, but be aware if you have people working on your property, you know, if they're contractors and such. But what we're doing here is trying to get groups together to help, you know, each other clear each other's property. It's California. Anybody can sue you at any time for any reason. And the bottom line is, are you ever going to be completely protected? Probably not. But as long as you're doing everything the right way, your insurance liability does, they work for you. So, yes, sir.
I don't know if I missed it, but are there rebates? I mean, if you take a class or if you show that you spend X amount of dollars clearing, is just farmers, for instance, nothing, huh? Give you any kind of...
That would be a really good thing to have. I'm going to a conference next week. I'm going to bring that up. It would be nice to see. So. Okay.
Hey, Patrice?
Yes,
In
Jerry.
real estate, one thing that we're doing now is that's the first thing that we check when we write a purchase offer on a home. That's the first contingency, is to be able to get fire insurance.
And I did a program at the Mariposa Board of Realtors in March when we first found out that one of the carriers was pulling out of. State Farm will not write anything in Mariposa County right now. Very, very little. And I did a program, and that's the first thing I told everybody is if you have someone who's buying a house, make that #1 priority. Start looking for your insurance right now and plan it as part of the budget, because living up here is not inexpensive, and that's one of the costs of living up here. So, yeah, it's good.
Do you see that changing when they do these fire breaks they're talking about?
Someday, I hope, but I don't have a crystal ball, so.